So welcome to Satsang. There's a tendency on the spiritual path to want to attain something. To accumulate spiritual qualities, qualities like joy and peace and love and oneness and even freedom. As if they were items on a shelf that you can pick and add to the shopping basket called your life. The mind's tendency is to accumulate. So even these non-material entities, ideas, constructs, qualities are seen to be an object. So there seem to be something to be added to your life, whilst not really changing anything about your life. As if these qualities will, by their very nature, transform this thing called your life. But this container called your life is something that needs to be emptied. The shopping basket needs to be cleansed of its flotsam and jetsam, the debris that has accumulated over a lifetime. These qualities of love and peace and joy and oneness qualities of being that are already in you, but cannot shine through when the shopping basket is full of all the conditioned, inherited beliefs and patterns and habitual ways of thinking that have been accumulated over this lifetime and perhaps previous lifetimes. They're an essential aspect of this thing called your life, this thing called you, the essential you. So they're not something to be learnt or cultivated or practiced. And there are many spiritual techniques, even meditations, that are about the cultivation of these higher qualities. And although that is useful, or can be useful, it's kind of back to front. It's working from the outside in rather than the inside out. And really is a kind of spiritual band-aid. It's a little bit like having a root canal where it's filled up with more gunk, more material to cover up the infection. But actually what needs to happen is a deep cleansing, not a cover-up job. A deep going inside. To investigate the scaffolding that upholds this inherited sense of self, this conditioned sense of self. And that's not a shopping trip. It's not something you pick and choose. The emptying of the shopping basket, the spiritual shopping basket, or the shopping basket called your life, is an opening to all mental and emotional, and sometimes physical, contractions that create this defense structure being referred to as scaffolding that upholds your personality and your sense of self, your sense of me. Because as we dive in, go inside, we meet all these contractions. We meet the energetic knots, which are essentially areas of pain, mental pain, emotional pain, sometimes physical pain. We meet what hurts. We meet what limits us. We meet what feels like a block, what feels like a wound, what feels like something broken, what feels like something fractured, what feels like something scary, what feels like something wrong, what feels like something unworthy, what feels like something powerless. We meet these energetic landscapes of density or darkness, desolate darkness within ourselves. And in meeting them, we have the opportunity to penetrate with awareness, to see in the unconditioned space of awareness and to investigate whether these contractions, these energetic knots, have any validity, any substance, or any permanence. And sometimes this means sitting inside them. It doesn't mean holding on to them. But sitting inside them is an open space where we go into that energetic knot, that energetic contraction. We don't contort or distort ourselves around it. We go into it and we sit inside it and we see inside it and we move through it, So if you go deep enough, you discover that emptiness is its nature. It has no lasting substance. But this is not something to believe. It's something to investigate for yourself. And in this opening and meeting, these contractions have the opportunity to dissolve, to be seen for what they are. And only then can these so-called spiritual qualities of joy and peace and love and oneness and freedom, only then can these qualities start to shine through you as you. But very often we stop at a certain place in this meeting of all contractions, meeting of these mental and emotional knots, areas of density. We stop because a deeper contraction is revealed. And that's the terror at the core, what we might call the main pin that holds your sense of identity together. The main pin. It's not attached to anything that is to do with your personal story. It's a universal contraction, if you like, around the core sense of self. It's a terror of death. It's a terror of annihilation. It's the terror of non-existence. And when this reveals itself, you have the opportunity to really move into it, not away from it. Sit inside it, not sit outside of it. Penetrate it, not create a defense barrier around it. Open to it. Not try to get rid of it. To falling into emptiness. To falling into no self. It's the end of you as you know yourself. It's the end of your life as you know it. And in this death, in this falling into emptiness, in this falling into pure beingness, the shopping basket dissolves. It is seen to be non-existent. It was just a figment of your imagination. And your life is seen to have no boundary, no center, no ground, no edge, no container. And all separation between you and life disappears. You become life. You are life. You already are life. Just this idea that there is a boundary between you and everything outside of you is what prevents the realization of this. And in this emptiness, in this vastness, there comes a fullness. It's not a fullness that can be grasped onto. There's no ownership in it. It's the fullness of life itself. But there's no self to hold on to it, to create it into another trophy, into another attainment. It's a fullness which is the blessing of life, the gift of life. And there's a humility in this, and there's a grace in this, and there's a sweetness in this, and there's a bitterness in this. Because everything is included. Everything. Everything that appears as life, which includes the horror of life, is included in this. And you are not separate from this. And in this realization, you become a servant of life. But you also become the master of life. So in fact, this dichotomy between servant and master doesn't exist anymore. It becomes meaningless. In fact, all opposites, all polarities become meaningless. They're only fabrications of the mind. And when all polarities, all opposites, have no meaning for you anymore, there is a great freedom. Because you're not moving towards one or running away from its opposite. There's no dichotomy. There's no split in you. There's no fight in you. There's no argument. There's no division. There's no conflict. What you like and don't like become irrelevant. And that's the fullness of life. And when the fullness of life informs you, there is a very different quality to life. Life continues in its usual groove. Maybe nothing changes. Maybe the circumstances of your life don't change. Maybe your personality doesn't change. Maybe your habitual tendencies don't change. Or maybe they do. But whether they change or not becomes irrelevant, because you're not trying to attain anything in order to make your life better or more spiritual. This idea that we can become spiritual in order to live a spiritual life and receive the spiritual goodies that this might mean to you. All this is seen to be a fabrication of mind. There's nothing spiritual other than what is. This division between mundane and spiritual, or human and spiritual. You already are that. Spiritual is a word that we've made up to mean something other than what is. And usually, mostly, this has attached to it a whole load of ideas as to what it looks like and what it means and how it will improve your life. So the question might arise, well, what to do then? If there's nothing to change and nothing to attain and nothing to add to my life, what to do? In some sense, there is a doing nothing, and in another sense, there is the necessity for 100% vigilance. In other words, the decision, the resolve to meet everything in unconditioned awareness. Everything that arises in you as a thought, as a feeling, as a physical sensation, as an experience, is revealing itself so that it can be met in the unconditioned space of awareness. And that means that you're not just reacting to life from the conditioned impulse. It has a spaciousness to it, and a silence to it, and a stillness to it that allows movement and allows response, but it comes from a very different place. And then this habitual pattern or mechanism of constantly avoiding what you have been conditioned to believe is wrong or bad or hurtful or painful. And this conditioned movement towards what you think is good and will bring pleasure and will bring satisfaction. This movement, this incessant movement of mind is seen for what it is. A primitive mechanism. So it's a 24/7 job. Yeah? It's not something that can be a hobby, a spiritual hobby. Something to be done on the side of the main focus of your life. It's not something you just dip your toe in. It's 24/7. Life itself is your spiritual path. There's nothing else. It's not a suitcase that you can just pick up when you want to and then put down when it gets too heavy. Life is happening, always. And you are either conscious or unconscious. You're either responding from conscious intelligence or reacting from conditioned habit. So life is either free, or rather you are either free or suffering. And if you're suffering, call is to open to that. To see inside it. To see through it. There is nothing separate from your spiritual path. Everything is included. So it's a bit about being total in life. Giving yourself totally. Because in that giving of yourself to life itself and the experience that is unfolding for you, in this case, a new relationship, we meet everything. Whether it's shame or unworthiness or unlovability. That's the gift of it. It all comes up to be seen. And in being seen, you're being given the opportunity to meet it in a way that perhaps is not available when we withhold from life through fear, or through unconscious habit. We box something up, whether it's relationship or spirituality or anything, when we put it in a box so that it fits in to my life, then it's very limited. And that box will never satisfy. It might for a short period of time, but there's no true relating in that. There's only a relationship from the figment of your imagination. But now there's something different. The potential of real relationship, which includes everything, the totality of you. And perhaps a loosening of the agenda around it. It doesn't have to fit into anything.
Yeah.
It simply is as it is. And maybe it will come and it will go and it will change form. But essentially that doesn't change anything or take anything away from you or add anything to you. It's simply the movement of life. And then it's blessed and it blesses you. Beautiful. Thank you. Go as far as you can. Go as far as you can. Go as deeply as you can. Yeah? Open. As much as you can. Penetrate. As much as you can. There's no end to the depth and the breadth of consciousness. Only your idea of how far you can go prevents that deepening and opening. Again, this is where you are vigilant, to where you put the block, you put the boundary on consciousness. And that boundary comes because you have an idea of yourself that you've inherited. I can't take this. I can't bear this. But that's just a conditioned response. The truth of you, the essence of you, is infinitely deep and infinitely wide. There is no limit, there is no boundary. And when you discover that, that's when the container of your life, the container of you, dissolves, it disappears. And then life simply flows through you, as your experience, and there is no separation. And that's when the deeper quality, if you like, if we're going to call it a quality, of joy starts to emerge. Not because you've gone out to achieve joy, not because you've cultivated a state of joy, not because you've done anything to deserve joy, but because it is. An emanation of your essential beingness. Again, we're putting a word, a label, to something that is unspeakable and indescribable and uncontainable. We're calling it joy. But the joy that the mind conceives of and the joy of being that becomes available to you are very different. They're in different dimensions. One's on the horizontal dimension, the mind dimension, the conceptual dimension, and it just becomes a commodity, the commodity of joy. The other one is the inner dimension, the vertical dimension, where no words, no labels, no concepts can adequately describe that which is being experienced. It's the essential state, the essential beingness of life itself, the hum of life, if you like. The hum of life as it lifes itself, as it is lifing itself through you. And that hum, which we might call joy, becomes the song of your life, the backdrop of your life. Even when things are difficult, even when there is apparent pain, it's like a background song. That never leaves you because it is you. And then this idea of joy as a particular boxed in commodity, it becomes ludicrous. You see how childish that is, how immature that is, how unintelligent that is. It's much vaster than that.